Welcome to the deep dive. We are so glad you are here with us today.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
If you're listening to this right now, chances are you've felt that overwhelming, almost suffocating wave of wellness advice that just crashes over us every single day.
Oh, absolutely.
You know the feeling. It's like, eat this superfood, don't eat that carb, sleep exactly like this, or try this bizarre new workout trend.
Right.
It is utterly exhausting. But today, our mission is to cut through all of that noise. We want to deliver a fast, fascinating, and, thorough shortcut
Yeah.
to understanding how you can actually age gracefully.
Yeah, without feeling like you need a PhD in biology to pull it off.
Exactly.
That is the perfect way to frame it. And to accomplish that mission today, we are pulling from a truly comprehensive text.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at excerpts from a book called The Science and Strategy of Living to 100.
Mm-hmm.
And what I appreciate most about this source is that it fundamentally changes the paradigm. Well, it frames aging not just as the inevitable passive ticking of a clock. Instead, it presents it as a highly complex but deeply manageable interplay of biological, environmental, and lifestyle factors.
It puts you back in the driver's seat, which is a huge relief.
Precisely. Our goal today is to extract the biggest aha moments from this text across four main pillars.
Right, so that's nutrition, movement, mental health, and community.
Yeah. We want to synthesize all this data so that you can walk away with clear, evidence-based insights that you can apply immediately to your own daily routine.
Okay, let's unpack this. If we want to build a machine that lasts a century, we have to look at the raw materials first.
The fuel.
Right. Let's talk about what's on our plates. The text kicks off with diet, and it really emphasizes the power of whole foods. But it's not about starvation or extreme restriction.
Which is usually what you hear in the wellness space.
Exactly. It's about balancing our macronutrients.
Right. And the authors make a really compelling argument for reframing how we look at those macronutrients. You know, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats.
They aren't the enemy.
No, they are specialized fuel sources.
The carbohydrate section really stood out to me because they get such a terrible reputation in diet culture right now, but the text specifically points out that complex carbohydrates, we're talking whole grains, fruits, vegetables, they're actually crucial for longevity.
They absolutely are. And the biological mechanism there is all about the glycemic index.
Okay.
Complex carbohydrates are broken down slowly by the body. This prevents those massive spikes and crashes in your blood sugar.
Which we all know feel terrible.
Right. Instead, they release energy in a sustained way, which keeps your metabolic system stable and, crucially, gives your brain a steady, uninterrupted supply of fuel throughout the day.
And the same rehabilitative approach is taken with healthy fats in the text.
Yeah.
Like avocados, nuts, olive oil.
The text notes that these fats are vital for maintaining brain health and for the production of hormones. But beyond that, they act as a carrier system.
The carrier system.
Yeah, so certain essential vitamins like vitamins A, D, E, and K are fat-soluble. If you aren't consuming healthy fats, your body literally cannot absorb those vitamins, no matter how many vegetables you eat.
Wow. That is such an important distinction. But the part of the nutrition breakdown that really made me pause was the research on protein.
Yes.
We often hear that we should eat less as we age, maybe lighten up our meals. But the text suggests the exact opposite when it comes to protein. Why is that?
This brings us to a concept called sarcopenia, which is a really critical point for older adults.
Okay.
Sarcopenia is the age-related involuntary loss of skeletal muscle mass and strength. As we grow older, our bodies naturally experience this decline, and our muscle tissues become somewhat resistant to the signals that normally tell them to grow.
Which sounds a bit daunting, honestly. If our bodies are actively resisting muscle growth, how do we fight back?
You fight back with high-quality protein, and you actually need more of it.
Interesting.
Older adults require a higher protein intake from sources like fish, poultry, legumes, and dairy, just to achieve the same muscle building and maintenance effects that a younger person would get from a smaller portion.
So you have to up the dose just to stay level.
Exactly. And this isn't about looking like a bodybuilder. Muscle mass is your biological retirement fund.
I love that phrase.
It is directly linked to better mobility, better bone density, and maintaining your independence. You need muscle to get out of a chair unassisted or to catch yourself if you lose your balance.
So protein is essentially your insurance policy against losing your independence. That is a vital takeaway. Now, moving from macros to micros, the text highlights a lineup of incredible superfoods.
Right.
Berries, dark leafy greens, dark chocolate. These are all packed with antioxidants. We hear that buzzword all the time, but how are they actually working inside the body?
To understand antioxidants, you have to understand oxidative stress. Imagine your cells are like a car engine. As the engine runs, as you breathe, digest food, and just exist, it naturally produces exhaust. In the body, this exhaust comes in the form of unstable molecules called free radicals.
So it's a normal byproduct of metabolism.
Right.
Okay, so free radicals are the cellular exhaust.
Precisely. But if you don't have a good ventilation system to clear that exhaust, it starts to damage the engine. Free radicals bounce around and damage your cellular DNA, leading to a state called oxidative stress.
And that's where the aging comes in.
Over time, yes, oxidative stress accelerates the aging process and is a major contributor to chronic diseases. Antioxidants are the biological ventilation system. They step in and neutralize those free radicals before they can cause damage.
So eating a handful of blueberries is quite literally protecting your cells from rusting from the inside out.
That's a great way to put it.
Now, beyond food, there was a hidden danger mentioned in the text that I hadn't fully considered, and I bet a lot of people listening haven't either. Yes, the book points out that as we age, our natural thirst mechanism actually diminishes. Wait, so our internal alarm clock for thirst just breaks down?
Pretty much.
How do we know how much to drink if our body isn't telling us we need it?
It is a fascinating and somewhat dangerous biological quirk. The receptors in our brain that detect changes in our blood volume and trigger the sensation of thirst, they become less sensitive over time.
Wow.
So your body might be operating at a severe water deficit, but your brain simply isn't sending you the signal to take a drink.
That seems like a massive design flaw. What does that actually look like in real life?
The real-world implications are staggering. Dehydration in older adults doesn't just mean a dry mouth or a mild headache. It causes a drop in blood volume, which leads to low blood pressure and dizziness.
Oh, which leads to falls.
Exactly. It significantly increases the risk of severe falls. It can also mimic dementia by causing acute confusion and cognitive sluggishness, not to mention drastically reducing kidney function.
So something as simple as not drinking a glass of water could lead to a life-altering fall or a hospital visit for confusion.
Yes.
The text urges a highly proactive approach here. Don't wait until you're thirsty, because the signal might not come. You have to actively track it.
Set reminders on your phone.
Yeah, carry a reusable bottle and incorporate hydrating foods. Cucumbers, oranges, broths, they all count toward that daily hydration goal.
It's about building a system so you don't have to rely on a faulty biological cue.
Exactly. Now, before we move off of fueling the machine, we have to talk about the supplement aisle.
Oh, yeah.
Because the text mentions several popular ones: omega-3s for heart health, probiotics for the gut microbiome, and herbs like turmeric for its anti-inflammatory curcumin, plus ginger and garlic.
Right.
It is so tempting to just buy a bunch of these pills, line them up on the counter, and call it a day.
What's fascinating here is the text's very nuanced, almost cautionary stance on this exact tendency.
We all love a quick fix.
We do, but the authors emphasize that while supplements can be incredibly helpful for filling specific, targeted gaps, especially things like vitamin D or omega-3s if you don't eat fish, they absolutely cannot replace the complex synergistic benefits of a whole food diet.
Meaning you can't out-supplement a diet of heavily processed food.
Exactly. A pill doesn't contain the fiber, the water content, or the hundreds of trace phytochemicals found in a whole apple or a piece of salmon.
Right.
Furthermore, the text explicitly warns about the more is better fallacy. High doses of certain concentrated herbal supplements can actually cause liver toxicity or interact negatively with prescription medications.
So the ultimate takeaway for this first pillar: eat the whole foods first, hydrate proactively, and use supplements exactly as the name implies, as a supplement to a solid foundation, not a substitute.
Precisely.
Which leads us perfectly into our next phase. We've fueled the machine, now how do we drive it? Let's talk about moving through the world. The text outlines a specific triad of physical activity. Can you break down why we need all three?
Certainly. The three pillars are aerobic exercise, strength training, and flexibility and balance. You really cannot rely on just one if your goal is long-term vitality.
Okay, let's start with aerobic.
First, you have aerobic exercise: walking, cycling, swimming. This is all about cardiovascular endurance. It regulates your cholesterol, strengthens the heart muscle, and releases endorphins, which are critical for reducing systemic inflammation and anxiety.
And the second is strength training, which loops right back to our conversation about sarcopenia.
Exactly. Using body weight, resistance bands, or weights provides the mechanical stress your body needs to signal those muscles to grow and preserve that vital lean tissue.
But the third pillar, flexibility and balance, is perhaps the most neglected.
Highly neglected.
This includes things the text mentions like yoga, tai chi, and even simple heel-to-toe walking exercises. Why is this so crucial for longevity?
Because it is specifically designed to prevent structural failure.
Wow.
As we age, our tendons and ligaments lose elasticity,
Oh.
maintaining your range of motion and your ability to proprioceptively balance, like being able to stand on one leg while you put your pants on.
Right. Something so simple.
It can literally be the difference between a long, independent life and a catastrophic hip fracture.
It's about building a body that can handle the unpredictability of the physical world. But the text makes a brilliant pivot right here.
It does.
It argues that it's not just about how we move through the world, it's about the world we are moving through. Our environment plays a massive role in our cellular health. I was really struck by the data on hidden dangers, particularly air pollution. It's not just a lung issue, is it?
Not at all. And this is where environmental science meets longevity. The text details how fine particulate matter, the microscopic pollution from vehicle exhaust and industrial emissions, is so incredibly small that it doesn't just get trapped in your lungs.
Wait, it goes further.
It passes right through the lung tissue and enters your bloodstream.
That is terrifying. What happens once it's in the blood?
It circulates throughout your entire body, triggering systemic inflammation. The text links this constant low-grade exposure directly to accelerated cognitive decline, cardiovascular disease, and even elevated rates of depression.
So it's an invisible stressor.
Exactly. The environment we inhabit exerts a chronic pressure on our biology. If you live in an area with high pollution, your immune system is fighting an invisible battle 24 hours a day, which depletes your biological reserves.
But the authors don't just leave us with doom and gloom. There is an antidote mentioned in the text, and I absolutely love this concept, green spaces.
Yes. The physiological benefits of nature are profound and well documented in the source material. When we spend time in green spaces, parks, forests, or community gardens, our biology actively shifts.
How so?
The exposure to phytoncides, which are airborne chemicals produced by plants, along with the visual quietness of nature, actively lowers cortisol levels. It dials down the nervous system's stress response.
So it's like nature is a multivitamin you can just walk into.
Pretty much.
The text also mentions community gardens specifically as a dual-purpose tool. You aren't just getting the green space. You're getting physical activity, access to fresh produce, and a sustainable shared habitat.
That's brilliant.
Speaking of habitats, that brings us to our third section, the mind-body connection. Let's look at the ultimate habitat, our bedroom. The text gives some incredibly actionable tips for optimizing the sleep sanctuary.
Sleep is foundational. It is the period where the body performs its most critical cellular repair, clears out metabolic waste from the brain, and consolidates memory. Without quality sleep, every single other longevity strategy we've discussed is severely compromised.
The book lists a few non-negotiables. Blackout curtains to ensure total darkness, limiting blue light from screens at least an hour before bed because it suppresses your natural melatonin production, and eating magnesium-rich foods like nuts or seeds to help calm the nervous system.
All excellent tips.
But here is a very specific takeaway for you listening right now. The text highlights an ideal sleep temperature that completely surprised me. You might want to prepare for a negotiation over the thermostat tonight because the ideal temperature for deep restorative sleep is a chilly 60 to 67 degrees Fahrenheit.
It sounds freezing to some people.
Why so cold?
It has to do with our circadian rhythm. In order for your brain to initiate and maintain the deepest, most restorative stages of the sleep cycle, specifically slow-wave sleep, your core body temperature actually needs to drop by a few degrees.
Oh, I see.
A cooler room facilitates that natural biological cooling process. If your room is too warm, your body struggles to lower its core temperature, resulting in fragmented, shallow sleep.
I am definitely turning my AC down tonight. But of course, even in a perfectly chilled, pitch-black room, sleep is often sabotaged by stress.
Yeah.
The text really digs into the chronic wear and tear of unmanaged stress.
Chronic stress is arguably the greatest accelerator of aging. It keeps your body locked in a state of fight or flight, flooding your system with cortisol and inflammatory markers.
Which is fine if you're running from a bear.
But not if you're just sitting in traffic. Over decades, this relentless chemical wash literally damages your blood vessels and suppresses your immune system.
So how do we turn off the faucet? The text introduces a fascinating category of herbs called adaptogens, specifically mentioning ashwagandha and rhodiola. So when you see ashwagandha offered as an add-in at your local smoothie shop, it's not just a trendy buzzword. What is it actually doing?
Adaptogens are unique because they don't just act as a sedative to calm you down. Instead, they help your body biologically adapt to environmental and psychological stress.
Adapt,
They
maybe.
modulate your adrenal response, meaning they help smooth out the release of cortisol so that your biological peaks and valleys aren't so extreme and damaging.
That's incredible. But the authors also emphasize that you don't just have to ingest things to manage stress, you can train your mind. The text enthusiastically lists different meditation modalities.
Right.
It mentions transcendental meditation, where you use a repeated mantra for 20 minutes twice a day. The research in the book shows this actually physically lowers blood pressure. And then there's metta, or loving kindness meditation, which focuses on building compassion.
Yes.
But how does sitting still and thinking about compassion actually improve our physical longevity?
It sounds purely psychological, but the biological downstream effects are very real. Studies referenced in the text show that practices like loving-kindness meditation reduce activity in the brain's default mode network,
Which is what?
the area associated with rumination and anxiety. By actively cultivating positive emotions, you decrease systemic inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein. Your thoughts literally change your blood chemistry.
That is mind-blowing. And it pairs perfectly with the text's focus on cognitive exercises. It suggests doing puzzles, learning to play a musical instrument, or picking up a new language.
And the mechanism there is neuroplasticity. This is the brain's remarkable ability to adapt, reorganize, and form entirely new neural pathways throughout your life.
But it requires novel stimulation.
Exactly. If you just do the same routine every day, the brain essentially goes on autopilot. You literally have to use it, challenge it, or lose it.
The text also highlights cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. Therapy isn't framed here as just a tool for a crisis, it's preventative maintenance to build emotional resilience.
Which is huge.
According to the research in the book, maintaining a positive outlook directly correlates to a longer lifespan. People who approach aging with optimism and adaptability tend to physically outlive those who view it with dread.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way.
So what does this all mean? We've talked about what we eat, how we move, where we live, and how we think. It leads us to our final section, the big picture, the longevity network. This is about preventive care and the social ties that bind this whole lifestyle together. The text provides a very clear medical roadmap, but it's not a one-size-fits-all checklist, is it?
Yeah.
What should we be looking out for as the decades pass?
The medical roadmap is all about catching cellular changes before they become catastrophic. The timeline the authors present is very strategic. In adolescence and young adulthood, the focus is largely on establishing baseline mental health checks and tracking developmental milestones.
And then as we hit adulthood,
The focus shifts heavily toward cardiovascular and metabolic tracking. You want routine monitoring of cholesterol, blood pressure, and blood glucose, alongside gender-specific screenings like pap smears or prostate exams.
and in middle age.
The risk profiles change again, which is why the text emphasizes colorectal cancer screenings and baseline bone density scans. And finally, for seniors, the preventive focus zeroes in on maintaining independence, utilizing fall risk assessments, and cognitive health evaluations.
The book also places a huge emphasis on vaccines. Science is moving so fast right now.
It really is. The authors explain a process called immune senescence. Basically, as we age, our immune system naturally loses its robust response capability. This makes vaccinations incredibly critical, acting as external armor.
Because your internal armor is wearing down.
Exactly. The text specifically calls out vaccines for shingles, pneumonia, and influenza as non-negotiable shields for older adults. They also touch on the exciting horizon of ongoing research into vaccines that could eventually target Alzheimer's disease and various cancers.
Alongside the medical interventions, the text urges everyone to map out their family health history. If you know that heart disease or osteoporosis runs in your family, you don't just wait for it to happen. You can personalize your nutrition and exercise plans today to mitigate those exact genetic risks. Knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
But beyond the clinical medical system, the text brings up a completely different kind of life-saving network, our friendships.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the biology of friendship is perhaps the most profound insight in the entire text. We so often think of socializing as just a pleasant leisure activity, but the authors present it as a hard biological necessity.
They mention communal dining, cooking with friends, and volunteering in your local community as longevity tools on par with exercise. I've always felt good after hanging out with friends, but what is actually happening under the hood?
It comes down to neurochemistry. When you engage in positive, meaningful social interactions, your brain triggers the release of a hormone called oxytocin.
The bonding hormone.
Right. Oxytocin actively dilates blood vessels, which reduces blood pressure, and it dampens the release of cortisol. So socializing actively improves your cardiovascular health. Furthermore, strong social ties encourage healthier behavioral choices. You're far more likely to eat well and stay active if your social circle values those activities.
The statistics the book shares on the flip side of that are sobering. It states that fighting loneliness and isolation is literally just as critical to living to 100 as hitting the gym or eating leafy greens. They equate the health risk of chronic isolation to smoking a pack of cigarettes a day.
That is the exact comparison. The systemic inflammation caused by chronic loneliness is a profound biological stressor. Calling a friend, joining a club, or volunteering isn't just a nice thing to do, it's a vital, measurable part of your healthcare routine.
So let's bring this all home. The core theme of the science and strategy of living to 100 is that longevity is not about finding a single magic hack. It is a holistic, interconnected practice.
Yes.
Everything we've discussed feeds into everything else. The complex carbohydrates you eat provide the energy for the strength training that preserves your muscle mass. The green spaces you walk in lower your cortisol, which allows you to sleep deeply in your 65-degree bedroom. And the energy you wake up with allows you to go out and engage with your community, releasing the oxytocin that protects your heart. It is a beautiful, self-sustaining loop.
It really is all connected.
Remember the actionable aha moments we uncovered today. Prepare to turn down that thermostat tonight. Be incredibly intentional about your protein intake to fight off sarcopenia. Drink water proactively before your diminished thirst mechanism fails you. And pick up the phone to call a friend to get that cardiovascular oxytocin boost. Here's where it gets really interesting.
We have spent almost this entire discussion focusing on optimizing the self, our own diets, our own sleep, our own exercise routines. But I want to leave you with a final lingering question that builds on the text's powerful themes of community and environment.
Okay.
If our surroundings, the microscopic pollution in our air, the accessibility of green spaces in our neighborhoods, and the strength of our social networks literally dictate our cellular health and our lifespan, then perhaps the ultimate strategy for living to 100 isn't just about fiercely optimizing your own body.
Wow.
Perhaps it's about dedicating yourself to healing and optimizing the community and the environment around you. Could the true fountain of youth actually be hidden in how well we take care of each other?
What a beautiful perspective-shifting question to end on. We highly encourage you to mull that over during your next walk, hopefully in a lush green space. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us today. Until next time, take care of yourself and take care of your community.